Minister Amichai Shikli, distinguished Knesset guests, Parliament members, let me begin with a quote. God indeed stands above Israel's evil snares and conspiracies, and God will ultimately defeat the evil schemes of Zionism. The establishment of Israel was a relapse to the most primitive concepts of an exclusive tribal God. This quote is from the head of the NGO Sabil, received €1 million from the European Union only recently. Your taxpayer money. Only a few weeks ago, an anti-Semitic map was published in Spain, mapping Jewish businesses in Barcelona. One of the NGOs that promoted this map, I quote, "Collaborate and spread the word, a collective and independent research project to understand how Zionism operates." 40% of the budget of this NGO that promoted the map comes from the European Union, your taxpayer money. October 7th was nonsense. This quote is from the head of the organization Miftach. 3.5 million euros in a joint project from the EU, your taxpayer money. And there are hundreds of examples. Ladies and gentlemen, the anti-Semitic atmosphere we see today in much of the Western world did not emerge spontaneously. It has been shaped for over 2 decades, largely through a moral and legal discourse led by an NGOs that claim to promote human rights, while consistently excluding Jews from those protections. It's an NGO ecosystem that frames, we have also the quotes, as you can see on the screen. It's an NGO ecosystem that frames Israel as a state whose very existence is illegitimate. A funded effort to deny Jewish self-determination, regardless borders, context, or history. When it comes to the money trail that fuels anti-Semitism, there are, of course, many actors involved. Qatar, Iran, Palestinian Authority, Turkey, and even China. They all invest in heavily influenced operations and narrative warfare. This is not a secret. But I want to focus on the West. I want to focus specifically as a case study in Europe. Because Europe not only affected by this process. Although Europe is one of our greatest allies, European governments play a central role in funding those NGOs. Our research at NGO Monitor shows that every year more than 300 million euros are spent by Western governments, including the European Union, directly and indirectly, to NGOs that involved in anti-Israeli, anti-Semitic actions. In some cases, and we have it all documented, this funding is linked to organizations that connected to terrorism. Boycotts, divestments, sanctions, lawfare, double standards, terror justification, these are the tactics these NGOs employ. And the results? Anti-Semitism is whitewashed and enters the mainstream. They operate everywhere. They operate on campuses, in businesses, in your parliament, in Congress, International Criminal Court, culture, sport, social media, and beyond. Wherever you look, we can show you, black on white, how European money is fueling some of those groups. Understanding the misuse of European funds brings us to another critical issue: lack of transparency. In some states, it's almost impossible to understand the funding process. Who decides? Based on what criteria? Why the same NGOs receive money all over again, every year? And what vetting mechanisms actually exist in your countries? At times, while following the money, we encounter a slightly different phenomenon. radical groups that are not officially funded by government money, but yet cooperating with European institutions. One example is the Hind Rajab Foundation, a Hezbollah-affiliated group that only recently collaborated with Europol, the European police, in effort to hunt Israeli soldiers. Another group is El-Haq, until 2 years ago, received funding from every big European government. It's a group that justifying October 7th. It's a group that calling to the dismantle of Israel. Only recently, El-Haq was sanctioned by the US administration and designated as a terror group by Israel. And still, El-Haq lobby freely in the European Parliament, and they are act freely in almost every European court. Another way that fuels those campaigns is through the misuse of Western money to humanitarian aid. We have seen additional funds intended for relief diverted in multiple ways into systems controlled by Hamas, or into advocacy networks that function as political warfare against the Jewish people. In some cases, the money support physical infrastructures, and we saw that during the operation in Gaza. In others, it fuels legal and media campaigns designed to isolate and delegitimize the Jewish state internationally. A recent report exposes official Hamas documents showing how Hamas recruited operatives inside major international humanitarian organizations in Gaza in order to take control of projects and funding. The vast majority of these organizations is funded directly by Europe, Canada, Australia, and also, in some cases, the United States. For 20 years, those NGOs stayed silent. They didn't say a word about the fact that Hamas control your money, but always blame the Jews of all wrongdoings, fueling again and again blood labels and conspiracies. Taking together this funding, you can see on the screen, those are original Hamas documents showing how they just misused every European organization or international organization that worked in Gaza. This money, this funding, whitewashed anti-Semitism. It creates a broader environment in which anti-Semitism is normalized. Attacks on Jews are given context only to the conflict. Terror is explained rather than confronted, and Jewish fear is treated as political inconvenience or merely an internal security issue. And Jewish self-defense is always framed as aggression. These well-funded narratives do not remain confined to Israel and the Middle East. The money to those NGOs return back to your home. It enters universities, media institutions, cultural spaces, and political discourse. This money eventually shapes how the Western world sees the Jews, not as people we write in history, but as a problem. All of our research, data, and documentation are published publicly and are available for you. We do not ask decision makers around the world to agree with us. We ask them to look at the facts and to raise hard questions. When it comes to fighting anti-Semitism on the funding front and understand where your taxpayer money is going to, transparency, accountability, and serious oversight are not hostile acts. They are the foundation of the trust between allies, of the trust between the State of Israel and the West. Following the money is not about politics. It's about defending our values, protecting human rights for everyone, and ensuring that your money and your resources are not used to fuel hatred, violence, or the demonization of the Jewish people. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this opportunity.